Welcome to today's Explainer. We're going to completely dismantle everything you think you know about Mary Shelley's absolute masterpiece, Frankenstein. I mean, whether you barely remember reading the novel back in high school, or you've just kind of absorbed the whole story through Halloween decorations and pop culture, chances are the image you have in your head, it's missing the profound, really thought-provoking reality of the original text. So today, we're diving into the historical context, the author's fascinating life, and the text itself to uncover the true brilliance of this story.
Okay, let's dive straight into this comparison because I guarantee you, the lumbering, brainless movie zombie you're probably picturing right now is completely at odds with Shelley's original vision. When you picture Frankenstein's monster, you're almost certainly seeing the 1931 James Whale film adaptation, right? You know, Boris Karloff with the bolts in his neck, grunting around, brought to life by this massive jolt of lightning. But in stark contrast, Shelley's original creature was incredibly agile. He was highly articulate and entirely self-educated. And fascinatingly enough, Shelley actually leaves the exact scientific method of his creation kind of ambiguous. Yep, there are absolutely no dramatic lightning strikes on the roof in the 1818 novel.
And just to clear up the biggest pop culture misconception right out of the gate, Frankenstein is actually the name of the scientist, Victor Frankenstein. His creation? Never given a name in the novel. Literally never. Victor refers to him only with terms like a wretch, a demon, a fiend, or simply creature. Now, this is an era that started happening almost immediately after the book was published. Even super famous authors like Edith Wharton made the mistake in print. But remembering that Frankenstein is the creator and not the monster is honestly the key to understanding the entire dynamic of the story.
Moving on to part 1, Year Without a Summer, and the wild birth of this story.
So this literally dark period gave birth to a legend.
Starting in 1815, Mount Tambora in Indonesia erupted, thrusting so much ash into the atmosphere that it caused an actual global volcanic winter. In fact, 1816 became known as the Year Without a Summer. So you've got this group of brilliant intellectuals, including the poet Lord Byron, Percy Bysshe Shelley, and Mary Shelley, and they were essentially trapped indoors by this dreary, freezing weather during a holiday at a villa near Lake Geneva, Switzerland. They're bored, they're restless, and so Lord Byron issues a challenge. Each of them has to write a ghost story. Mary actually struggled with this for days, until the early hours of June 16th when she had a terrifying waking dream. She pictured a pale student of unhallowed arts kneeling beside the thing he had put together. And remarkably, by January 1st, 1818, that waking nightmare was published for the entire world to read.
It is absolutely mind-blowing to consider that Mary Shelley was only 18 years old when she began writing a story that would permanently alter pop culture. Just 18. She was literally a teenager, surrounded by some of the most famous, established male literary figures of her era, yet she was the one who produced a narrative that has endured and evolved for over 2 centuries. Crazy, right?
Which brings us to part 2, The Modern Prometheus. That was actually the novel's original subtitle, and it's a massive clue to Shelley's real intent.
So, if you remember your mythology, Prometheus was the Greek titan who stole fire from the gods to give to humanity, and he was eternally punished for it. Victor Frankenstein is our modern Prometheus, essentially stealing the fire of life itself. The absolutely crucial point here is that the creature actually starts out benevolent. Just look at this tragic arc. When he first awakens, Victor is so horrified by his physical ugliness that he literally abandons him. The creature runs away, hides out in a hovel, and secretly observes a human family. Through that careful observation, he actually teaches himself to speak, read, and write. He even performs good deeds, like saving a young girl from drowning, only to be shot by her terrified father. It's this continuous, violent rejection by humanity that twists him into a vengeful fiend. Ultimately, he confronts Victor, demanding a female companion so he just won't be entirely alone in the world. When Victor destroys the half-finished female creature out of pure fear, the original creature systematically murders Victor's closest family and friends in retaliation.
This incredibly powerful quote from the creature, which directly references John Milton's epic poem Paradise Lost, completely shatters that whole myth of a grunting beast. He tells his creator, "I ought to be thy Adam, but I am rather the fallen angel whom thou drivest from joy for no misdeed." He's displaying profound existential agony here. He recognizes that, as Victor's creation, he should be treated with the love of a first man, an Adam. But instead, he's cast out and despised like Lucifer, the fallen angel, despite having done absolutely nothing wrong to warrant that initial rejection. It's truly heartbreaking, and it forces us to step back and completely reevaluate who the real monster of the story actually is.
All right, moving right along to part 3, Science Without Morality, and the fascinating historical context of the era.
Now, while the specific method of creation is pretty vague in the novel, Mary Shelley's social circle was actively discussing something called galvanism. This was a very real and highly controversial science at the time. Scientists like Giovanni Aldini were conducting these wild public demonstrations where they applied electrical currents to the dead tissue of animals and, get this, even executed criminals. The electricity caused their limbs to violently spasm and move. To the people of the early 1800s, it legitimately suggested that electricity might be the actual spark of life, so that made Victor's fictional experiment feel entirely plausible to readers back then.
SparkNotes analysis points out that the novel isn't just some spooky tale. It's a really sharp critique of the anxieties surrounding the scientific revolution. Think about the massive shifts happening in society at this time. Humanity was rapidly moving away from blind faith and demanding hard evidence and observation. But to get that anatomical evidence, scientists required the mutilation and dissection of corpses, often stolen straight from charnel houses, which is exactly what Victor does. This raised intense societal fears about humans attempting to play God, crossing natural boundaries, and the honestly terrifying concept that scientific progress might just be entirely limitless.
But here is the really nuanced takeaway. The story doesn't tell us that science itself is evil. In fact, Victor's pursuit of knowledge is initially presented as a completely natural ambition. Rather, the novel warns us about what happens when ambition blinds a creator to their ethical obligations. Victor's grand failure wasn't just in creating the creature, his ultimate sin was abandoning it. He completely failed to take any moral responsibility for the life he brought into the world.
And that brings us to Part 4, the ultimate sci-fi legacy and the birth of a brand new genre.
Scholars, including noted author Brian Aldiss, widely recognize Frankenstein as the birthplace of the entire science fiction genre. Think about it. Before this, fantastical stories relied on magic, gods, or spells. Victor Frankenstein, however, makes a deliberate decision to turn to modern laboratory experiments, chemistry, and anatomical science to achieve his fantastic results. This massive shift from the supernatural to the scientific literally laid the groundwork for every single sci-fi story that followed. It was a real game changer.
But its emotional resonance is just as powerful as its scientific legacy. The acclaimed director Guillermo del Toro perfectly captures exactly why the book endures. He calls it the quintessential teenage book. At its core, it's this profound story of teenage alienation, of feeling misunderstood, feeling awkward in your own body, and feeling totally abandoned by the people who are supposed to care for you. And it's all brilliantly wrapped up in a gothic nightmare by an 18-year-old girl.
I want to end this explainer with the exact question Mary Shelley posed over 200 years ago. Because when you consider the rapid advancements happening right now in our own time, whether we're talking about artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, or beyond, this question feels more urgently relevant today than ever before. When scientific progress is limitless, who bears the moral responsibility for the creation? It's something we are still, quite frankly, struggling to answer. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into Frankenstein, and I hope you walk away seeing this classic tale in a completely new light.